Damn it, this isn't just another rescue, it's a damn nightmare come alive, the voice in the rescue van muttered as it screeched to a halt at the foot of the craggy hillside. In the dim light of early dawn, the rugged outline of the cave loomed like an open wound in the side of the mountain, its jagged mouth beckoning with an eerie, almost mocking grin. Outside, the wind hissed through gnarled pines, carrying with it a mix of cold mist and the first murmurs of disbelief from the gathered rescuers. Deep within that forsaken crevice, a soft, heart-wrenching cry echoed, a cry that cut through the silence like a shard of glass. The sound was raw, desperate, and unyieldingly human. In a scene more surreal than any nightmare, a tiny infant, swaddled in a tattered blanket, sat alone on a rocky ledge. His incessant crying resonated against the ancient stone, a sound that tethered the rescuers to a reality too brutal to ignore. Detective Amelia Reed, a seasoned investigator of life's cruelties and miracles alike, led the small team. Her eyes, hard as flint yet brimming with a fierce compassion, scanned the scene. Amelia's years in crisis response had taught her that every rescue was a puzzle of human suffering and unexpected tenderness. Today, however, the pieces were as perplexing as they were poignant. There was no immediate sign of the child's protector, only an inexplicable sense that someone, or something, had vigilantly guarded the infant from the clutches of fate. The first location, the cave itself, was a forbidding space, damp, dark, and laden with the weight of untold stories. As the team cautiously navigated the narrow passages, every footstep was measured against the overwhelming silence and the soft echo of the baby's cries. The cave's walls, streaked with the memories of centuries, bore silent testimony to nature's relentless indifference. Yet, in the midst of this stark backdrop, the baby's plaintive wail was a call for help that transcended the boundary between despair and hope. Amelia's second-in-command, Marcus Delgado, knelt beside the infant, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he reached out. "Hey, little guy," he murmured, his tone a mixture of reassurance and astonishment, "we're here now." The baby's cry softened momentarily into a hiccup of uncertainty before resuming its sorrowful cadence. Despite his tiny form, there was an aura of defiance about him, as if the child, through his relentless crying, was daring fate to deny him a future. Outside the cave, the rescue team established a makeshift command post. The second location, a modest, time-worn ranger station at the mountain's base, was a place where local legends and hard-won experiences merged. Inside, maps were spread across a scarred wooden table, and weathered photographs of previous rescues adorned the walls. The room hummed with a tense energy, a shared understanding that this rescue was not simply about retrieving a lost child, but about unraveling a mystery that could redefine the boundaries of compassion and duty. As daylight gradually conquered the shadows, whispers of speculation began to circulate. Rumors, half-formed and laced with local folklore, spoke of a mysterious guardian who was said to wander the cave's labyrinthine corridors, protecting those who were abandoned by society. The idea, as far-fetched as it might seem in a modern world dictated by logic and reason, clung stubbornly to the minds of the rescuers. Amelia, however, dismissed such notions with a steady pragmatism. "We're here to save a life, not to chase ghosts," she reminded the team, her voice firm yet carrying an undercurrent of vulnerability that hinted at her own haunted past. The team's third location, a temporary field hospital set up in a repurposed community center in the nearby town, became the nexus of hope and heartbreak. In stark contrast to the wild isolation of the mountain, the town was a patchwork of worn brick buildings, narrow cobblestone streets, and the hum of everyday life. Yet the events unfolding on the outskirts had rattled the fabric of normality. Locals gathered in hushed groups outside the center, their faces etched with a mixture of awe and anxiety as they watched paramedics wheel the baby inside. Inside the field hospital, the clinical scent of antiseptics mingled with the palpable tension. Dr. Leena Patel, the on-call pediatric specialist, prepared to examine the infant with the care of a guardian whose own childhood had been touched by loss. The baby's small, fragile form was a study in contradictions, his body marked by the tender bruises of a harsh environment, yet his eyes shone with an inner light that defied the darkness of his surroundings. As Dr. Patel gently cleaned the child's wounds and assessed his condition, her gloved hands moved with the precision and empathy of someone who knew that every life was a narrative worth preserving. Meanwhile, back at the cave, a chilling discovery deepened the mystery. A few paces away from where the infant had been found, hidden behind a fallen boulder, lay a collection of personal belongings: an old, leather-bound diary, a child's toy carved from wood, and a faded scarf bearing the initials R. These artifacts hinted at a connection, a guardian who had once been intimately involved in the life of this lost child. The diary's pages, though damp and weathered by time, revealed fragments of a story that blurred the line between tragedy and devotion. A man, whose identity remained shrouded in mystery, had risked everything to protect this child from a fate he deemed cruel and unjust. Returning to the field hospital, whispers of the mysterious protector had begun to ripple through the staff. Dr. Patel paused in her examination, a troubled look crossing her face as she read aloud a snippet from the diary that had been recovered. He was determined to shield him from the world's cruelty, even if it meant disappearing into the shadows, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the sterile air like a spectral promise, a vow of sacrifice that transcended the ordinary and plunged into the realm of raw, unfiltered emotion. In the hours that followed, as the baby stabilized under round-the-clock care, the rescuers struggled to piece together the fragments of the enigma that was his guardian. Interviews with local residents painted a picture of a man who was both a myth and a tangible presence, a solitary figure who had wandered the fringes of society long before the child's cry had drawn him into the cave. His motives remained inscrutable. Was he a fallen hero, seeking redemption for past transgressions? Or merely a desperate soul compelled by an unyielding sense of duty? Amelia Reed, whose own history was marked by personal loss and the scars of past missions, found herself drawn into the labyrinth of this unfolding mystery. Every new detail stirred memories of similar cases, each echoing with the silent question of what it truly meant to protect another human life. As she stood before the gathered team in the fading light of dusk, her gaze was fixed not on the challenges of the rescue, but on the silent promise of the unknown guardian. "We must remember," she said, her tone resolute yet laced with quiet sorrow, "that sometimes the most profound acts of bravery are hidden in the quiet corners of despair." The narrative of that fateful day stretched out like a tapestry woven with threads of raw human emotion and stark reality. The rescuers moved from location to location, each step unveiling layers of human experience: the haunting isolation of the cave, the pragmatic resilience of the mountain community, and the bittersweet hope of the temporary hospital. Throughout it all, the infant's cry served as a relentless reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of protection, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Outside, the twilight deepened into a starless night, and the mountain silhouette merged with the inky sky. In that profound darkness, every sound was amplified: the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of the wind, and the rhythmic pulse of a rescue team united by a common purpose. For Amelia and her colleagues, the quest to find the truth behind the mysterious guardian was no longer just a mission, it was a journey into the very heart of what it meant to care, to sacrifice, and to confront the inexplicable forces that could render the strongest among them vulnerable. In that moment, as the first responders gathered their resolve to press on, the lines between the ordinary and the extraordinary blurred. The infant, now swaddled in fresh linens and cradled by compassionate hands, was more than just a victim of circumstance, he was a living testament to the transformative power of human compassion. And as the rescuers prepared to follow the faint, almost imperceptible traces left behind in the cave, a trail of personal mementos, whispered secrets, and the heavy promise of redemption, they understood that this rescue was far from over. Every detail of that day was seared into the minds of those involved. The image of the baby, his eyes wide and uncomprehending, juxtaposed with the ghostly remnants of his protector's presence, would forever haunt the corridors of memory. In the quiet moments between the clamor of activity and the solemnity of personal reflection, the rescuers wondered if perhaps, in the darkest of places, humanity could still kindle a flame of hope, a beacon that defied the chill of indifference. Thus began the first chapter of a story that was as much about the resilience of the human spirit as it was about the mystery of a lone guardian. It was a narrative woven from the threads of everyday life and the unexpected interludes of profound sorrow and determination, a narrative that demanded to be heard, to be felt, and ultimately, to remind everyone that even in the bleakest of circumstances, a single act of protection could ripple outwards, transforming lives and defying the very notion of abandonment. As the mountain night wore on and the team prepared for the long, uncertain hours ahead, the air remained thick with anticipation and the bitter tang of impending revelations. Each rescuer carried with them not only the weight of their duty but also the silent hope that somewhere, in the shadows of human experience, lay the answers they so desperately sought. And in that fragile interplay between duty and destiny, the line between protector and protected became a testament to the unyielding, if sometimes tragic, beauty of life itself. In the cold light of early morning, as the remnants of night clung stubbornly to the mountain, the rescue team gathered in quiet determination. The first hints of dawn revealed not only the scars etched on the cave walls but also the delicate fragility of the human soul, a soul that had been exposed to nature's indifference and man's boundless compassion. Detective Amelia Reed, still reeling from the echoes of the previous hours, surveyed the scene with a sober intensity that seemed to absorb every whispered secret of the mountain. The child, now resting in the gentle hum of the field hospital's monitored care, lay like a symbol of hope amid despair. In the makeshift infirmary, where the sterile smell of antiseptics mingled with the raw scent of earth and sweat, Dr. Leena Patel reviewed the baby's condition with meticulous care. Every bruise, every cut on the child's small body told a story of neglect, of a hidden past that had led him to that cold, unforgiving cave. Dr. Patel's practiced hands moved slowly, as if each touch might coax the child's memories back from oblivion. The baby's eyes, still filled with the lingering terror of isolation, now held a glimmer of trust, as if silently pleading for reassurance that he was no longer alone. Elsewhere, back at the cave, Marcus Delgado retraced the steps of the enigmatic guardian. The spot where the personal effects had been discovered was cordoned off by bright floodlights, their harsh beams cutting through the gloom like shards of an unyielding truth. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, he examined every detail: the worn leather of the diary, the carefully folded scarf with the faded R, and the small, intricately carved toy. Each artifact whispered secrets of a past that was as elusive as it was compelling. Delgado's weathered face, lined with years of witnessing both hope and heartbreak, betrayed a quiet awe. The diary's cryptic notes hinted at a man who had once carried burdens too heavy for an ordinary soul, a man who had chosen solitude and sacrifice over the comforts of conventional life. As the team began piecing together the Guardian's identity, rumors stirred among the locals like a slow, relentless tide. In the small town near the mountain, whispers of a reclusive man who had once been known for his compassion echoed in the narrow streets and time-worn cafes. The community, still shaken by the recent events, found itself drawn into a narrative that blurred the line between myth and reality. The local sheriff, a gruff man with a weathered sense of duty, recalled fragments of conversation from long ago, a man who had helped the needy without asking for recognition, a man who had vanished just as mysteriously as he had appeared. Amelia Reed convened an impromptu meeting with the core team at a modest diner on the edge of town, a third location that, despite its humble interior and faded vinyl booths, became the epicenter of their deliberations. Over cups of lukewarm coffee and the persistent hum of a radio in the background, the rescuers exchanged observations and hypotheses. The diner's worn wallpaper and dim lighting lent an air of intimacy to the discussion, as if the very walls were absorbing the gravity of the situation. "We're not just dealing with a missing guardian," Amelia stated, her voice low but resolute. "Every clue here is a thread in a tapestry of lost lives and unspoken sacrifices. We owe it to that child, and to everyone who's ever been overlooked, to uncover the truth." Her words resonated in the small space, drawing nods and murmurs of agreement from her colleagues. During that conversation, Delgado pulled out a few lines from the diary, a poignant passage that spoke of an inner battle between duty and despair. The words were raw and unadorned, yet they vibrated with an urgency that cut through the monotony of everyday life. They recounted a man's determination to shield a fragile life from a world that had long turned its back on him. Even as the room fell silent in the wake of those revelations, the intensity of the moment was palpable, each listener feeling, in their own way, the burden of protecting the vulnerable. Back at the hospital, the baby's condition began to stabilize, though every heartbeat was a reminder of the fragility of life. Dr. Patel observed the child's progress with a mix of scientific detachment and profound empathy. In quiet moments between rounds, she found herself drawn to the baby's eyes, which flickered with an otherworldly resilience, a silent promise that even in the darkest places, hope could emerge. The baby's survival was more than a medical victory, it was an emblem of the invisible battles fought by those who chose to care in a world that often seemed indifferent. In the soft corridors of the hospital, Amelia revisited the personal belongings found in the cave. The faded initials, the carefully preserved diary, and the toy all formed a mosaic of a life that had been lived in the shadows. Every artifact was a testament to the Guardian's quiet heroism, a man who, despite his own demons, had acted with an unspoken courage that defied societal expectations. As she scrutinized the details, a silent determination took hold of her. The mystery was no longer just about piecing together the past, but about understanding a kind of love that existed outside the boundaries of normalcy, a love that demanded unyielding sacrifice. The narrative of that day had unfolded with the relentless pace of an unfolding drama. The cave, with its timeless silence, had spoken volumes about the harsh realities of nature and humanity alike. The small town, with its quiet streets and weathered inhabitants, had offered a backdrop of resilience and shared sorrow. And in the midst of it all, a tiny life clung to existence like a fragile beacon in the night. As the team regrouped and prepared to extend their inquiry, a palpable sense of urgency began to take root. The mysterious Guardian was not merely a fleeting memory, he was a living echo of a past filled with overlooked sacrifices and unrecognized bravery. Delgado, driven by a quiet obsession, retraced the path that led from the cave to the town. His journey took him along narrow, winding roads flanked by towering pines whose branches whispered secrets in the wind. Every turn, every shadow, seemed to hold the possibility of an answer, a clue that could unlock the identity of the elusive protector. In a quiet alley near the outskirts of the town, Delgado encountered an elderly woman who appeared as if she had stepped out of another era. With eyes clouded by time yet sharp with memories, she recalled a man who had visited her home many years ago. He had a way about him, she murmured, her voice a fragile thread of recollection. Not much to say, but his presence, it was as if he carried the weight of the world in his gaze. He never asked for anything, just offered his help when the time was right. Her words, though softly spoken, resonated with a stark clarity that sent chills down Delgado's spine. It was a piece of the puzzle, a human fragment of a narrative that stretched far beyond the confines of the mountain and the cave. Meanwhile, inside the diner, the mood had shifted from cautious optimism to a focused determination to unearth more clues. Amelia and her colleagues pored over local records, scouring old newspapers and town archives for any mention of a man with the mysterious initials R. Each yellowed page and faded photograph deepened the enigma, as if the Guardian had deliberately erased his own existence from the public record. The juxtaposition of the tangible evidence and the elusive whispers of memory created a tension that was both disconcerting and oddly captivating. In the midst of their research, a breakthrough came in the form of a handwritten note tucked away inside an old ledger at the local library. The note, penned in a hurried scrawl, mentioned a man who had once worked as a handyman for the town's modest public works department, a man who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The initials R were inscribed in the corner, a fleeting but undeniable link to the Guardian whose quiet vigil in the cave had so captured their collective imagination. Though the note provided few concrete details, it fueled the growing conviction among the rescuers that they were on the brink of unraveling a story that was as heart-wrenching as it was inexplicable. As the day advanced, the town itself seemed to hold its breath. Every resident, from the local shopkeepers to the weathered laborers, felt a silent kinship with the unfolding drama. The collective memory of the community, etched with stories of hardship and quiet heroism, was stirred by the promise of uncovering the truth behind the mysterious Guardian. And so, as shadows receded and a tentative warmth replaced the chill of dawn, the investigation wove itself deeper into the fabric of the town's history. Amelia, Delgado, and the rest of the team now found themselves balancing between the relentless pace of modern rescue operations and the timeless echoes of a past that refused to be forgotten. Every piece of evidence, every whispered recollection, was a testament to a life lived in the margins, a life defined not by grand gestures, but by quiet, unyielding acts of kindness. The baby's survival, against all odds, was intertwined with the Guardian's legacy, a legacy that transcended the simplicity of daily existence and spoke to the very core of what it meant to protect another human being. In the hours that followed, as the investigation unfolded like a slow-burning fuse, the mountain, the cave, and the town became characters in their own right. Their landscapes, raw, unvarnished, and imbued with memories, served as silent witnesses to a narrative of human resilience and unspoken sacrifice. The interplay between the rugged wilderness and the fragile humanity of the rescued child painted a stark picture of contrasts, the unyielding strength of nature and the equally unyielding tenderness of a guardian's heart. As Amelia prepared to leave the diner and rejoin her team in the field, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every road they traversed, every whispered secret they uncovered, was a step toward understanding a truth that defied easy explanation. It was a journey that demanded both courage and compassion, a journey that reminded them that even in the most unremarkable corners of the world, extraordinary acts of protection and sacrifice could emerge. With a final glance at the fading light filtering through the diner's grimy window, the team set out once again. Their destination was clear: to follow the trail of memories, to confront the shadows of a forgotten past, and to give voice to the silent promise that had echoed from that desolate cave. Each step, each decision, was imbued with the urgency of lives intertwined by fate, a fate that would soon reveal the full measure of a guardian's quiet, indomitable resolve. In the charged silence of that day, as the investigation gathered momentum and the town braced itself for revelations that might alter its very soul, the mysterious figure behind the initials R loomed larger than ever. His story, fragmented yet fiercely alive, continued to beckon from the margins, urging those who dared to listen to uncover the painful beauty of a legacy defined by selfless protection. And as the team pressed on, the mountain itself seemed to murmur in approval, its ancient stones a testament to the enduring power of secrets, sacrifice, and the delicate dance between hope and despair. The investigation wound its way deeper into the town's hidden recesses, the kind of places where secrets festered in the corners of narrow streets and faded doorways. As the sun arced higher, casting fractured beams of light onto weathered brick walls, Detective Reed and Marcus Delgado found themselves drawn to a neglected, crumbling building on the edge of town. Rumors had long whispered that this derelict structure once served as a community center, a place where hope and despair had danced a dangerous waltz through the decades. Now, it stood as a silent repository of memories, a fitting stage for the next chapter in the Guardian's enigma. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp decay and old paper, punctuated by the distant hum of cicadas outside. Reed's eyes adjusted to the gloom as she carefully traced her fingers over peeling murals and discarded relics of a bygone era. Every step was a cautious negotiation between curiosity and caution, as if each creaking floorboard might betray the presence of something, or someone, still lingering in the shadows. Delgado, his flashlight slicing through the darkness, revealed clusters of faded photographs and yellowed newspapers tucked away in a corner. Each image, each headline, seemed to whisper fragments of the Guardian story, like echoes of a past too stubborn to vanish entirely. At the center of a dust-laden table, Reed discovered a stack of letters bound by a fraying ribbon. The correspondence, penned in an elegant, looping script, bore the unmistakable mark of someone who had once been intimately involved in the town's affairs. One letter, addressed simply to R, recounted the trials of a family burdened by sorrow and misunderstanding, a family that had found solace in the quiet intervention of a mysterious benefactor. The language was tender yet stark, a blend of gratitude and grief that spoke to sacrifices made in silence. Reed's pulse quickened as she absorbed each carefully chosen word, the narrative merging seamlessly with the accounts of those who had witnessed the Guardian's rare appearances over the years. Meanwhile, Delgado's attention was captured by a series of sketches hanging on a dilapidated wall. The drawings were raw and unpolished, rendered in charcoal and ink with a desperate clarity that belied their age. They depicted a solitary figure, a man with downcast eyes and a posture that bore the weight of unspoken burdens, moving stealthily through the corridors of memory. The images, though stark in their simplicity, resonated with a visceral energy, as if they had been drawn in a single, fevered night of revelation. Delgado's voice, roughened by both time and experience, broke the silence. He wasn't just a man, Amelia. He was a symbol, a living testament to the power of quiet redemption. His words, though soft, reverberated in the vast emptiness of the room, as if the very walls had listened and wept. Outside, the relentless cadence of everyday life continued, indifferent to the gravity unfolding within the abandoned building. The town's residents moved along their familiar paths, each unaware that their collective past was being reassembled piece by a team determined to honor a forgotten legacy. Yet even as mundane routines went on, there was an undercurrent of anticipation, a subtle shift in the air that hinted at revelations yet to come. In hushed tones and fleeting glances, neighbors exchanged news of the unfolding mystery, each person contributing to the tapestry of collective memory. Back at the scene of the discovery, Detective Reed sat in quiet reflection amid the artifacts of the past. She considered the duality of the Guardian's legacy, a life marked by solitary sacrifice, and the quiet, unassuming acts of kindness that had once turned strangers into family. The letters, sketches, and photographs were not just evidence, they were the echoes of a heart that had loved without expectation and guarded without question. With each passing moment, the intensity of her conviction grew, fueling an inner resolve to bring clarity to a story that had long languished in the shadows. In a corner of the same building, Delgado found a rusted tin box, its surface etched with the faint outline of initials that matched those on the scarf from the cave. Carefully, he pried it open, revealing a collection of mementos, a faded concert ticket, a pressed flower, and a small, intricately carved wooden figure, a miniature replica of the toy found at the cave site. Each item was a silent testament to moments of tenderness and hope, encapsulated in a physical form. Delgado's mind raced as he pieced together these fragments, each one a clue pointing towards a life lived on the fringes of recognition. "This is our bridge," he murmured, half to himself, between the forgotten past and the painful present. As afternoon settled over the town, the investigation expanded its scope. Reed and Delgado met with longtime residents in an effort to reconstruct the timeline of the Guardian's appearances. They visited a faded workshop near the town square, where a retired carpenter recounted his memories of a man who had once shown up unannounced to fix broken doors, mend shattered windows, and offer a helping hand to those in despair. His words were laced with admiration and a touch of melancholy, a wistful acknowledgement of a time when compassion was a quiet, unspoken covenant among neighbors. At the workshop, the scent of sawdust and varnish mingled with the soft hum of reminiscence. The carpenter, his hands rough and calloused from decades of labor, described the Guardian as someone whose presence, though fleeting, left an indelible mark on the community. "He never stayed long enough for anyone to really know him," the old man said, his eyes glazing over with memories of a gentler past. "But when he was here, it was like a balm for all the wounds life had inflicted on us." His words, simple and sincere, lent a human face to the enigmatic figure whose name had been whispered in every retelling of the town's lore. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of blood and gold, Reed returned to the cave one last time. The familiar darkness of its depths now felt like an old friend, a keeper of secrets too profound to be fully understood. With the steady beam of her flashlight, she retraced the route where the infant had been found, her mind a tumult of memories, hypotheses, and a growing empathy for the mysterious Guardian. Each step resonated with the quiet determination of someone who had dedicated her life to uncovering the truth, regardless of the cost. In that solemn darkness, Reed's thoughts wandered to the notion of protection, of the quiet, relentless duty that compels some to step into the void for the sake of others. The cave, with its ancient, unyielding walls, became a metaphor for the barriers that life erects around us, a stark reminder that even the most vulnerable among us often possess a hidden reserve of strength and resilience. Here, in the heart of nature's indifferent embrace, the boundaries between protector and protected blurred, merging into a single, unified narrative of sacrifice and hope. The night deepened, and as Reed exited the cave, the chill of the evening wrapped around her like a shroud. The silence was broken only by the distant call of an owl and the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by the cool breeze. In that solitary moment, she felt a profound connection to the Guardian whose life had been pieced together from scraps of memory and whispered legends. The investigation was not merely about solving a mystery, it was about acknowledging the quiet heroism that often went unnoticed, the selfless acts of love that defined a community long before the modern world had reduced human connection to fleeting digital exchanges. Across town, the investigation continued to ripple outward, touching lives and stirring emotions in unexpected ways. Neighbors, inspired by the rediscovered legacy of their unknown benefactor, began to share stories of their own secret acts of kindness, small gestures that had brought light into the dark corners of their daily struggles. In cozy living rooms and over shared meals, these recollections wove a counter-narrative to the cynicism that sometimes gripped the modern heart, a reminder that even in a world brimming with chaos and indifference, there remained a reservoir of compassion waiting to be tapped. By the time the clock struck midnight, the layers of the Guardian's legacy had expanded into something greater than anyone had anticipated. The discovery of his personal effects, the recollections of townsfolk, and the delicate intersections of fate and memory had converged into a single, profound question: how could one man, operating from the shadows, leave such a luminous impact on an entire community? For Detective Reed, the answer lay not in grand declarations, but in the quiet acknowledgement of the human capacity for empathy and sacrifice. As she prepared for another long day of interviews and archival research, she vowed silently to honor the Guardian's memory by ensuring that his story, one woven from the threads of anonymity and quiet heroism, would never be lost to time. His legacy, she realized, was a mirror reflecting the best of humanity, the courage to act in silence, the willingness to shoulder burdens unseen, and the unyielding belief that every life, no matter how small, deserved protection. In the hush of that midnight hour, the investigation continued to unfold like a delicate flower in the dark, a slow, deliberate blooming that promised to reveal even more about the man behind the initials R, and the countless lives touched by his unspoken kindness. And as the moon cast a pale glow over the town, every shadow and every whisper carried the weight of a truth that was both unsettling and profoundly beautiful, that in the tapestry of human existence, even the smallest threads could bind together a legacy of enduring hope and compassion. The relentless quest for truth led the team deeper into the maze of memories and quiet desperation that had gripped the town for decades. In the waning light of another stormy afternoon, when the grey skies wept gentle tears over the battered rooftops, Detective Reed found herself at a long-forgotten community garden. Overgrown with wild vines and tangled underbrush, the space was a silent repository of neglected hopes and dreams, a stark contrast to the ordered chaos of modern life. Here, amid the tangled greenery, Reed discovered yet another piece of the Guardian's enigmatic legacy. A small, weathered bench lay half buried under a canopy of ivy, its once bright paint dulled by the relentless march of time. Clutched in its crevice was a tiny, silver locket, its surface etched with intricate filigree. Inside, a faded photograph of a smiling family, a mother, father, and a little boy, glimmered faintly in the muted light. The locket was a delicate reminder that the Guardian, with his initials R, had once touched lives in a way that transcended the immediate, fleeting moments of rescue. It was as if he had sought to preserve a memory, a moment of joy amid sorrow, offering a silent promise of protection to those who needed it most. Marcus Delgado, his hand steady despite the chill that clung to him like a second skin, carefully placed the locket into a small evidence bag. His eyes met Reed's, and in that brief exchange lay an unspoken understanding. Every item they uncovered was a testament to a life devoted to safeguarding others, a life that continued to resonate in the present even as it was anchored in the past. The discovery stirred in them a mix of admiration and an unsettling awareness of the cost such sacrifices demanded. Across town, in a modest apartment illuminated by the flicker of a lone television, a young woman named Elise sat on the edge of her threadbare sofa. Unbeknownst to the rescuers, Elise had been a silent witness to the Guardian's fleeting appearances over the years. As a child, she had often seen a man in a worn jacket silently mend broken toys outside her window on rainy nights. Now, years later, the whispers of his deeds had blossomed into the legend that was slowly being unearthed by Detective Reed and her team. Elise's heart ached with both nostalgia and a quiet sorrow, an acknowledgement that such selfless acts were both a blessing and a heavy, irrevocable burden. In the cramped confines of a local archive, a repository of dusty records and forgotten files, Delgado pored over old municipal documents. Among the faded entries, a peculiar note surfaced in the ledger of public works. The note mentioned an A.R. Hawthorne who had once been employed as a handyman, a figure whose sudden disappearance had sparked hushed conversations among the town's elders. The ledger, its ink smudged and pages brittle, painted a fragmented picture of a man who had stepped away from the world, choosing instead to weave his existence into the very fabric of the community's hidden narrative. Delgado's brow furrowed as he compared the dates and signatures, the delicate puzzle pieces aligning to form a picture that was as heartbreaking as it was elusive. Meanwhile, back at the field hospital, the rescued infant, now a quiet, determined symbol of hope, continued to defy the odds. Dr. Patel, with her compassionate gaze and unwavering focus, monitored every heartbeat and breath. The child's frail form was a living paradox, fragile yet fiercely resilient, as if the spirit of the mysterious guardian pulsed within him. In the sterile confines of the hospital room, each beep of the monitor was a reminder of the delicate balance between life and the void, between despair and the fierce, unyielding will to survive. As dusk approached, the rescuers reconvened in a cramped briefing room at the local precinct. The air was heavy with anticipation and the soft hum of fluorescent lights, a stark counterpoint to the raw, natural settings they had traversed throughout the day. Detective Reed spread out the artifacts, letters, photographs, the locket, and allowed the weight of each item to permeate the space. Every object was a fragment of a larger story, a narrative stitched together by the quiet hands of a man who had chosen obscurity over recognition. His legacy was not etched in grand monuments, but in the tender gestures of everyday kindness that had touched the lives of those who were too often forgotten. In that somber setting, the team's conversation turned reflective. Delgado, his voice low and measured, recalled the words of the carpenter from earlier in the day. "He was a phantom in our midst," he said, "a man who gave more than he ever received, leaving behind echoes of warmth in the cold corridors of our memories." His words resonated with a profound truth, that in every act of quiet heroism there existed both beauty and an inevitable melancholy, a bittersweet reminder that such souls carried scars invisible to the eye. Reed's mind wandered to the moments she had witnessed in the cave, the juxtaposition of raw despair and tender hope, the overwhelming grief tempered by the possibility of redemption. The mountain, the town, the forgotten garden, and even the small, glimmering locket all converged into a single, haunting narrative. It was a story not of sensational heroics, but of the unyielding, fragile human spirit, a story that demanded to be told in whispers and sighs, in moments of profound silence and unexpected bursts of emotion. As the night deepened and the precinct's walls seemed to close in with the collective weight of unspoken memories, Reed realized that the Guardian's true legacy was not simply in the artifacts he left behind, but in the lives he had irrevocably touched. Every person they interviewed, every scrap of evidence they unearthed, testified to the indelible mark of his compassion, a mark that transcended time and defied the inevitable erosion of memory. In that reflective quiet, amid the soft rustle of paper and the steady hum of distant traffic, the team committed themselves anew to uncovering the full truth. They understood that the Guardian story was not a relic of the past to be neatly archived, but a living, breathing force that continued to shape the present. And as they prepared for yet another day of relentless pursuit, the legacy of R. shrouded in mystery and illuminated by the unwavering glow of compassion, stood as a beacon against the encroaching darkness, promising that even in the harshest moments of life, there remained a spark of hope waiting to be kindled. As the first light of dawn broke over the rugged horizon, the final chapter of this haunting journey began to reveal itself. Detective Reed stood on the threshold of the cave once more, the chill of the mountain air mingling with a resolute warmth in her heart. Behind her, the town stirred awake, its quiet streets and weathered faces reflecting a collective anticipation for closure. The baby, now steadily recovering under the tender care of Dr. Patel, had become more than a symbol of survival. He was a living testament to a Guardian's enduring legacy. In the muted glow of morning, Marcus Delgado arrived at the cave with a final piece of evidence clutched tightly in his hand, a crumpled, dog-eared note that had escaped notice until now. The faded ink carried a message so raw and unvarnished that it could only have been written by a soul burdened with unspoken truths. The note spoke of regret and redemption, of promises made in the solitude of twilight and broken by the harshness of life. Its words echoed in the silence, a final confession from the enigmatic R, that bound the disparate fragments of his life into one tragic, beautiful narrative. Detective Reed and Delgado exchanged a glance heavy with shared understanding, a tacit acknowledgement that the Guardian story was now theirs to honor. With careful deliberation, they pieced together the chronology of events that had led to that fateful night in the cave. The evidence painted a portrait of a man who had wandered through life in quiet penance, offering protection and solace to those who, like him, had been cast aside by a merciless world. His acts of kindness were not grand gestures designed for the spotlight, they were delicate, almost imperceptible interventions that restored hope in the dark corners of despair. Back at the town's modest community center, a place where life had been lived in its rawest form, the rescuers gathered for one final meeting. Over the low murmur of conversation and the soft clinking of coffee cups, the townspeople recounted memories of the elusive benefactor. A local school teacher remembered a rainy afternoon when a quiet man had fixed a broken window at the orphanage, and a retired nurse recalled how he had silently delivered a bundle of old blankets to a struggling family in the dead of winter. Each story, though disparate in detail, resonated with the same gentle heroism that had defined his life. In that humble setting, Reed addressed the gathering with a measured tone that bridged the gap between hard-earned pragmatism and heartfelt vulnerability. "We have found pieces of his truth," she said, her voice both firm and tender, "but what remains with us is the legacy he left behind, the belief that even in the most desolate of circumstances, a single act of protection can ignite hope in the darkness." Her words rippled through the room, drawing nods and murmurs of agreement, as if every listener had, in their own quiet way, felt the Guardian's presence at some point in their lives. The investigation reached its poignant climax at the town's weathered memorial park, where a modest plaque had been erected in honor of those who had given their lives in the service of others. Here, amidst the gentle rustle of autumn leaves and the solemn murmur of distant prayers, Reed and Delgado placed the recovered locket alongside a handful of other cherished mementos, a final tribute to the mysterious art whose story had woven itself into the very fabric of the community. The gesture was silent yet profound, a recognition that while some heroes choose the shadows, their light can endure long after they have faded from sight. As the ceremony drew to a close, the baby's soft coos echoed in the still air, a gentle reminder that life, fragile and tenacious, would continue to blossom despite the scars of the past. Dr. Patel's reassuring smile and the quiet, dignified nods from townsfolk encapsulated the unspoken promise of renewal, a promise that the Guardian's selfless acts would not be consigned to memory alone, but would inspire a future defined by compassion and resilience. In the hours that followed, as Reed retraced her steps along the familiar paths of the mountain and Delgado quietly archived the final pieces of evidence, the landscape itself seemed to exhale a long-held breath. The cave, once a symbol of desolation, now shimmered with a quiet dignity, its ancient walls bearing witness to a legacy that had transcended the boundaries of time and space. The mountain, the town, and every humble corner they had encountered on their journey had been irrevocably transformed by the enduring truth that sometimes the most profound acts of love are those performed in silence, without the need for recognition. In the final moments of that day, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in tender hues of amber and rose, Detective Reed stood alone by the cave's entrance, her eyes fixed on the horizon. There was an unspoken understanding between her and the mountain, a mutual acknowledgement of the bittersweet interplay between loss and hope. Though the Guardian's identity might forever remain shrouded in mystery, his spirit had irrevocably altered the course of many lives. And in that quiet convergence of destiny and memory, the true meaning of protection was etched not in grand monuments, but in the small, everyday moments of empathy and sacrifice. As the darkness of the coming night embraced the land, the Guardian's story found its final resting place, not in the pages of an old diary, nor in the whispers of a forgotten town, but in the hearts of those he had touched. His legacy, luminous and enduring, would continue to guide them through the uncertainties of life, a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, a single light can forge a path toward redemption. In that timeless moment, amid the soft glow of the fading day and the resilient murmur of a community reborn, the truth was clear: love, in its purest form, is the most potent force of all, a quiet, unwavering promise that no one, no matter how lost or forgotten, is ever truly alone.